Hello. Thank you for coming back after the coffee break to the panel number 1 called Phase Out and Just Transition in Coal Regions. My name is Nevena Smilevska. I work for the CE Bankwatch network as the Just Transition Coordinator for the Western Balkans. The CE Bankwatch network works on following public funds to make sure they do not get invested into environmentally harmful projects. We follow the just transition process in Central and Eastern Europe and work to pass the experience from those countries to the countries in the Western Balkans. Which brings us to why we are here on this panel today with 7 very relevant speakers from the region and abroad. CE Bankwatch Network has several documents on just transition, including on the 4 principles and 8 steps for just transition, which I will not get into now as they have been discussed at length in other forums and are also available on our website. But we have also done a study on Just Transition Fund for the Western Balkans and how this Just Transition Fund should be distributed when it becomes available. We advocate for this Just Transition Fund for the Western Balkans because in the experience of EU countries, it was evident that Just Transition picked up only once a Just Transition Fund was established for these countries. Once DG ENER visited the coal regions to support the process of just transition. So I hope that some of this will be mentioned by some of the speakers on the panel today. Any just transition funding must be conditioned by having a territorial just transition plan equivalent that was properly consulted with all affected stakeholders. That would ensure any just transition funds are spent for actual decarbonization projects. These are the views of the CE Bankwatch network and of CSOs who are working in the region on the topic of just transition and coal phase out. But they are apparently not the only views on the process of just transition away from coal. To explore the key socio-economic challenges faced by coal regions in transition and reflect on possible ways they can be addressed, we have 7 panelists here. So we have Veronique Marx, the team leader for coal regions from DG ENER from the European Commission. We have Christopher Sheldon, who is the country manager for Bosnia and Herzegovina and Montenegro in the World Bank Group. We have Samantha Smith, the director of the Just Transition Center. The mayor of Myrnohrad, I hope I pronounced this right, from the Oleksandr Brykalov from the Donetsk region of Ukraine. And then here in the room, we have Mr. Sasha Spasic, the director of the public company for underground coal exploitation Resavica. Ms. Branislava Marsenic, the coordinator of the Center for Alleviating Energy Poverty from the Energy Community Secretariat. And last but not least, our host, the CEO of Elektroprivreda BiH, Mr. Admir Andelija. I would like to begin this panel with introducing Ms. Veronique Marx, if that is okay. Is Veronique here? Yes, I see her. So Veronique Marx is the team leader for Just Transition and Energy Poverty at the Directorate General for Energy in the European Commission. Until recently, she worked at the Secretary General of the European Commission on the coordination of the European Union's energy policy. Welcome, Veronique. The question for you is, as discussed during our preparations, that you will set the scene for this panel by introducing the concept of just transition of the EU as a pillar of the European Green Deal and, of course, the related green agenda for the Western Balkans. While time is short, we have only 5 minutes. I would also appreciate if you can explain the projects that are done in the EU to support coal regions and the support program to Ukraine and Western Balkans, as well as what was the main driver for just transition happening in EU countries. Go ahead, please. The floor is yours.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Nevena, for introducing me, and good morning to everyone that can see virtually. Thank you also very much for this invitation to participate here today. It's a pleasure. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a background on the just transition in the EU, and then, of course, introduce a little bit of the support programs that we have in the Commission and in the Western Balkans on the just transition. I mean, as you probably know already, the just transition is a key pillar of the EU's Green Deal strategy, which is the EU's growth strategy. So the strategy really puts people and communities at the center of economic growth, as well as the climate and energy policy, and with that exemplifies that no transition if it's not driven by the people and if it's not just and it doesn't leave anyone behind. So this is very much enshrined in the way we are now operating in the European Commission and the policies that we are aiming to implement. Transition, we have a panoply of measures. Some are financial and some, as I will explain, are related to exchanges and capacity building. On the financial measures, in 2019, the Commission put in place a big just transition mechanism, which aims to generate 55 billion euros for this transition in EU member states. It's composed of various financial instruments, including a fund, which are grants, a budgetary guarantee mechanisms, as well as a public sector loan facility. But given that my time is very short, I just didn't want to dwell too much on the funds, but I really wanted to explain you and present to you an initiative that has been in place in the EU or at EU level for some time, and that's the Coal Regions in Transition Initiative. It supports the coal regions, the coal, peat and shale oil regions in the EU. And assist these regions to really transition out of coal to more decarbonized way of living and economic development. Its strength is really the experience sharing between these regions, the exchange, the technical assistance that can be given, as well as capacity building for these regions. This initiative has been quite successful and has been very well received by most regions, which is why then in 2020, so 2 years ago, we set up a similar initiative also for the Western Balkans and for Ukraine. So the initiative is called the Initiative for the Coal Regions in Transition in the Western Balkans and Ukraine. And it's implemented in cooperation with 6 international partners, some of which are also sitting here with me together in the panel. So the World Bank, the European Investment Bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the Energy Community Secretariats, the College of Europe, as well as Poland's National Fund for Environmental Protection. So as I mentioned before, so the initiative really tries to support these regions in identifying transition ways out of coal exploitation and coal use in power production. It has put in place a learning academy for the capacity building, but also very importantly, it has put in place an exchange program so that regions can meet among themselves, I mean, between themselves and learn from each other and exchange on best practices and work on these areas together. I know my time is very short, so I mean, even for further information, please don't hesitate to look on our website or contact the Secretariat of this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Veronique, for this intervention. Please stay with us for any questions from the audience later after all the addresses have been made. Our second panelist today is Mr. Christopher Sheldon from the World Bank. Hello, Mr. Sheldon. Christopher Sheldon has joined as country manager in July 2021, country manager for Bosnia and Herzegovina and Montenegro, and is responsible for the overall World Bank program in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Montenegro, covering diverse sectors including financial, business, climate, health, water, transport, energy, environment, governance, agriculture, forestry, and employment sectors. Most recently, he held the position of practice manager with the Energy and Extractives Global Practice in the Infrastructure Practice Group of the World Bank. Mr. Sheldon, kindly introduce us to the World Bank's global approach to a just transition for all. I would also very much appreciate if you can tell us how the bank is currently working with coal-producing countries, including in Europe, towards achieving a just transition. Please go ahead, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for having me. As you know, I'm normally based in Sarajevo, so it's strange to not be there in person. I'm actually in Washington, D.C. this week, so it's 6 o'clock in the morning here. But when they asked me if I'd like to do it, I jumped at the opportunity because this is such an important topic and something that's close to my heart, having worked on it for almost 3 decades. Transition away from coal has brought a lot of new opportunities for scaling up renewable energy, but at the same time presents a lot of challenges to meet the growing energy demand and ensure that everybody has access to energy and that countries have energy security. But in the Western Balkans, you know, where I'm based, there's a real need for just transition. There's a lot of air pollution issues, energy security concerns. There's a high dependence on coal and oil, and therefore a high vulnerability and a limited ability to absorb energy price shocks and policy changes that are coming in regard to carbon emissions. But it's a complex thing to achieve. So when the World Bank looks at this, they have a sort of a community and people-focused approach and developed a Just Transition for All initiative. So this initiative works with stakeholders to create the plans, the policies, and the reforms that are needed to mitigate the environmental impacts, but also support the impacted people, the workers, the communities, to build a new clean energy future. The World Bank's a global leader in supporting countries in their transition away from coal. It's based on experience that we've had, over about 30 or so years through 11 different lending operations. Russia, Ukraine, Poland, and Romania. I personally worked on Poland and Romania. We did about $2.7 billion of lending, as well as a lot of case studies that we've looked at from other countries in Europe, the United Kingdom, United States, and also China. So we developed a real programmatic approach that's really organized around 3 areas. So you have an institutional governance pillar, a people and communities pillar, and then environmental remediation and repurposing of the former mining lands and other assets. So each focus area involves a set of plans, policies, and actions that together they can help mitigate the impact of coal mine closure on the environment and the affected people and communities. But you really need to involve stakeholders actively in that whole process in all different levels. And the whole thing is built on principles of inclusion, stakeholder consultation, and citizen engagement, because unless there's strong understanding and support and a vision for the future, it's very hard to be successful in this transition. So we work with a lot of other organizations as well. Veronique just mentioned about the really good collaboration from different development organizations and non-government organizations, and also private sector investors. We have a global initiative supporting energy transition in coal regions. Back in 2018 at the COP, we presented our first technical report, but we sort of built on that with a whole program that provides technical and policy advice, also direct investment financing to finance these transitions, and risk mitigation measures to countries that have made the decision to transition away from coal. And I think that's important. We see our job as supporting countries when they make that decision and helping them to be successful in that. So this initiative delivers real just-in-time technical assistance to countries and builds on a lot of peer-to-peer learning, and this is a good example of this, what we're doing today, and supports governments to preserve the growing human, physical, and environmental capital by supporting the clients to build the institutional capacities to really manage the transition and to work with the stakeholders, have very good engagement strategy, affected workers, developing reskilling, job transition programs, developing comprehensive environmental remediation to repurpose former mining lands and coal assets, into turning them into something else that's productive, and then present some potential pathways for economic transition. So it's a real comprehensive approach. This will help countries meet their nationally determined contributions as part of the Paris Agreement. And we also, do a lot of analytical work on related topics through this work. In particular, even in Bosnia, now we've been developing some transition roadmaps. We did that in Western Macedonia, Greece, for example. We can also develop pre-feasibility and feasibility studies, do a lot of stakeholder engagement, social sustainability assessments, assess the land for what you can do with that land. Can you build on it? Can it be returned to agriculture? What is it suitable for? So you can develop the appropriate environmental remediation that supports the decommissioning, but importantly, the repurposing of the assets. The work's been growing a lot since 2019. We currently have active engagements in about 16 countries. We're expanding a lot into Asia with an Asian coal platform, but the heart of our work did really start here in the Europe and Central Asia region. The work, experience that we gained with the World Bank in Ukraine, the Western Balkans and the Ukraine Coal Regions Platform Initiative. So we've been continuing to build on that and then deepen our engagements in China, India, Indonesia, South Africa. Specifically in the Western Balkans, we have work going on in Serbia. We completed our work in Greece a while ago. We have some work in Bulgaria. As I'm responsible for Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we have ongoing technical work there, and we've built into our future lending program support to actually help government in that transition. So I'll stop there and look forward to any questions, but thank you very much. It's such an important topic, and good afternoon to all of you.
Thank you very much for your intervention, and also thank you very much for getting up at 6 a.m. to speak to us. It is very much appreciated. Please stay for any questions after all the addresses have been. Our next speaker is Ms. Samantha Smith. She is the director of the Just Transition Center at the International Trade Union Confederation, which represents more than 200 million organized workers in 160 countries. 163 countries. So, Ms. Smith, you represent quite a lot of workers that work in different industries and in different countries. Would you say that rules for just transition are different according to the EU and the UN rules? And furthermore, in your experience, what is essential for ensuring that transition is just? How do social dialogue and stakeholder engagement play into the process of your experience? Please go ahead with your address. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. We just actually held a workshop of trade unions across the Balkans, and I can come with some insights from that discussion, as well as internationally. I mean, I think the first thing to say is that we often talk about just transition, but without maybe sort of having a common understanding of what it is. And in the Paris Agreement, it is about the just transition of the workforce and the creation of decent work and quality jobs. There are also UN rules agreed, negotiated in the International Labor Organization about what just transition is and what the processes to get to a just transition need to be. So I'm going to drop some of those things in the chat so that we all have the same resources. I definitely wouldn't say that there is a difference between the rules at the UN level for just transition and the European Union's approach to just transition, which is based on the partnership principle. So both have social dialogue between employers and trade unions, and often trade unions, employers, and government as a sort of founding principle. And if you don't have social dialogue, you might be doing something else that's good and worthwhile and related to the energy transition, but it's not actually just transition. And there's one other piece of just transition that you have also in the UN rules for just transition and in the EU, and that's this idea of a broader stakeholder engagement, the consultation that a few of the speakers have referred to, but that's different from social dialogue because it doesn't necessarily result in a binding outcome. Whereas collective bargaining between employers and unions results in binding outcomes, and tripartite negotiations between governments, employers, and unions also results in binding outcomes. So we're talking about two different things, both of which are important for just transition. There's one other aspect of just transition that's also in the UN rules and now in the EU's approach to coal phase out into energy transition, and that is about the price of energy and energy access. So one of the things that we heard from trade unionists across the Balkans last week, hosted by our affiliates in Bulgaria, is that across all countries, people are facing huge problems paying their electricity bills. And we expect that because of the war and the energy crisis in Europe and around the world, that problem is going to intensify. And in that situation, it is absolutely critical that climate and transition policy addresses people's core concerns, which amongst other things are about, one of them is being able to keep the lights on and to heat your home. The justice of this is also about who pays. So who is going to pay for this surge in energy prices that hit poor and working class families particularly hard, and also who should pay for this transition. So one more principle about transition that we've learned, because we're working with unions all over the world, we have an initiative with all of the trade unions in Europe, including all of the sector, the energy unions, which is focused on the EU Green Deal, Repower EU, whatever we're going to get in terms of policy making in the face of the energy crisis, because we think there will be more. But we also work with our affiliates in South Africa, India, Indonesia, the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, Colombia. It's really a lot. And one really important part of just transition is that it is about jobs, right? It's about jobs and social protection. And in this process of getting down emissions, of decarbonizing, of potentially closing coal-fired facilities and coal mines, you have to make sure that there are new jobs. It's not enough to skill people for jobs that don't exist. And those new jobs should be good jobs, because often the jobs in the energy sector and in the mines are the best quality jobs in the economy if you look at security of contract, pension, wages, and so on. And so if the new jobs aren't good jobs, people are very likely to resist the prospect of being either unemployed or underemployed in a job that is significantly less secure or well paid. So that is absolutely key. And the other thing that's absolutely key also in this energy crisis is that people have social protection. So that includes not only support to poor and working class households, so people can pay their power bills, but it also includes arrangements to secure pension, healthcare, and public services for people in this period where we're facing very high inflation, including in some of the Balkan states. So I think I'll stop there. I'm going to drop a few things into the chat, but just to urge the importance of social dialogue, to also urge the Energy Community Secretariat to have engagements with a lot of interest in having a sort of informal exchange of views about just transition directly with the Secretariat and also with some of the members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. Thank you also for dropping some links in the chat. They are very, very welcome. I hope also our participants online can copy them and use them. Next on the panel, we have the mayor of Myrnohrad, Oleksandr Brykalov, from the Donetsk region of Ukraine. Can we? Yes. Hello, Mr. Brykalov. I will ask the translation to explain to Mr. Brykalov that we will have consecutive translation for him due to technical reasons. So he will need to adjust his speech accordingly, so to make breaks to allow for translation. Mr. Brykalov is here as the representative of the Platform for Sustainable Development of Coal Town of the Donetsk region. And my question to him is that we know that you are located in eastern Ukraine. Fierce and active combat is happening very near to you. But even in these circumstances, you are still ready to think about just transition of your town. Why is that so?
Зараз хотіла би передати слово пану Олександру Брикалову. Він міський голова міста Бrykalov. І хочу вам нагадати, що під час вашого виступу здійснюватиметься послідовний переклад, тому, будь ласка, робіть паузу для того, щоб вас могли перекладати. З технічних причин довелося нам організувати саме послідовний переклад. І ми знаємо, що ви є представником платформи сталого розвитку вугільних міст Донеччини. Скажіть, будь ласка, до вас наступне питання. Оскільки ваше місто знаходиться на сході України, дуже близько до вас точаться бойові дії. Як вам вдається продовжувати опікуватися питаннями справедливого переходу навіть попри це?
Доброго дня, шановні учасники форуму, дорогі наші європейські партнери.
Greetings, esteemed forum participants and our esteemed European partners.
Зі сходу України, із Донецького шахтарського регіону вас вітає Мирноградська територіальна громада.
Myrnohrad Amalgamated Territorial Community is sending their regards from the east of Ukraine, from Donetsk Oblast of Ukraine, a mining region.
Передусім, я радий можливості звернутися до вас і подякувати за всю ту допомогу, яку сьогодні отримує Україна від багатьох європейських країн.
First and foremost, I'm extremely glad that today we have an opportunity to speak in front of you and express our gratitude for all of the support that today Ukraine receives from many European countries.
Сьогодні ми, як ніколи, відчуваємо єдність та підтримку всього цивілізованого світу.
Today, as never before, we feel unity and support coming from the entire civilized world.
Особливо подяка організаторам заходу, Секретаріату енергетичного співробітництва за можливість прийняти участь у даному форумі, бо незважаючи на всі загрози та ризики воєнної агресії, наша громада залишається активним учасником у процесі вугільної трансформації.
I especially would like to extend my gratitude to the event organizers, the Energy Community Secretariat, for the opportunity to participate in today's forum, because despite of all threats and risks of the military aggression, our community continues staying the active participant in the process of coal transformation.
З 2018 року ми разом з іншими шахтарськими громадами стали членами платформи сталого розвитку вугільних міст Донецької області, яку створили, об'єднавшись разом з громадським сектором, з громадськими організаціями.
In 2018, together with other coal mining communities, we became the members of Donetsk Oblast, which we created, having united our efforts together with the civil sector, civil society organizations.
Ця ініціатива стала пілотною в Україні і визвала неймовірну зацікавленість серед шахтарських міст, національних інститутів і міжнародних організацій.
This became the pilot initiative in Ukraine, and it piqued huge interest among coal mining towns, national institutions, and international organizations.
Кажучи про нашу громаду, варто відмітити, що при кількості населення близько 50 тисяч на 3 вугільних шахтах державного підприємства «Мyrnohrad» було задіяно близько 50% від числа працюючого населення громади.
Speaking about our community, is worth highlighting that with the total population of around 50,000 people, we had 3 coal mines that belong to the state-owned enterprise Myrnohrad and about 50% of all working-age population were employed there.
Аналогічна ситуація складалася і в інших моногромадах регіону. Тому з урахуванням тенденції до карбонізації та умовою поступового зеленого переходу стало зрозумілим необхідність проведення суттєвих структурних змін для перевантаження наших територій.
The situation was quite similar in other mono communities in our region. This is why, given the trends of decarbonization and step-by-step green transition, it became clear that there is a high time to introduce serious structural change to reboot these territories.
За останні декілька років при підтримці німецьких партнерів компанії GIZ, організації Bankwatch та українських громадських організацій ми змогли отримати допомогу у проведенні аудиту наших громад, розробці стратегічних документів, ознайомитися практично з найкращими світовими практиками.
German partners, GIZ, German Watch, as well as Ukrainian civil society organizations, we managed to get assistance and aid in carrying out the audit of our communities, developing strategic documents, learning from best international practice.
Відгук ми отримали і на національному рівні. Уряд схвалив концепцію державної цільової програми справедливої трансформації вугільних регіонів України на період до 2030 року.
Also, we got a very positive reaction at the national level. The government approved the concept of the state-targeted program dedicated to just transition for coal regions in Ukraine for the period until 2030.
Утворений також і працює координаційний центр з питань трансформації вугільних регіонів України. Розроблена стратегія економічного розвитку Донецької та Луганської областей на період до 2030 року, в якому передбачені всі ці питання.
Also, the coordination center for coal regions transition in Ukraine was created. The strategy of the economic development for Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast until 2030 was developed, and it includes all of the aforementioned
У рамках
issues.
проєкту уряду Німеччини підтримка структурних змін у вугільних регіонах України, наше місто разом із містом Червоноград Луганської області в якості перших пілотних партнерів в Україні розпочали працювати над новою моделлю території, над новою моделлю розвитку території вугільної від вугільної залежності.
In the framework of the project by the German government titled Support of the Structural Change in Coal Regions of Ukraine, our town, together with Myrnohrad as first pilot partners in Ukraine, started working on the new model dedicated to development of the coal-free territories.
Таким чином, ще кілька місяців тому ми вже мали певний прогрес, напрацювали топ-проекти у напрямку реконструкції системи централізованого теплопостачання міста із використанням потенціалу шахтної води. Такі топ-проекти, як створення енергокооперативів, виробництво будівельних матеріалів шляхом переробки шахтних породних відвалів, створення альтернативного джерела водозабезпечення шляхом використання потенціалу шахтних вод та інші проекти.
Hence, several months ago, we already had achieved certain progress. We developed some of the top projects dedicated to renovation of the central heating system for the town using potential of the mine water. Also, we created energy cooperatives, as well as we're working on producing construction materials by processing mining dumps and tailing. We also have created the alternative source for water supply by using the potential of mine waters, as well as other projects.
Однак з початком повномасштабного військового вторгнення наша громада змінила свій звичайний життєвий устрій. Знаходячись на лінії фронту, фокус уваги змістився на військові питання, облаштування побуту для внутрішньо переміщених осіб, прийом гуманітарної допомоги.
However, as the full-scale invasion started, our community had to change the routine that we were used to. Being very close to be more precise, being located at the very front line, we had to shift our attention to the military issues, such as working with humanitarian aid and assistance.
За цей час ми зіткнулися з новими викликами та загрозами, пов'язаними із відключенням газу, центрального водопостачання, здійсненням майбутнього теплопостачання в майбутній опалювальний сезон.
Over these several months, we came across new challenges and threats that are connected with disconnecting us from gas supply, centralized water supply, as well as a challenge that will come with the new heating season and which is related to the central heating supply.
Вагому допомогу у вирішенні посталих питань ми отримуємо від проєкту уряду Німеччини. Найближчим часом за рахунок коштів цього проєкту планується встановити на відстійнику шахтної води, шахта центральна, одну фільтрувальну установу за принципом зворотнього осмосу, що стане альтернативним джерелом водозабезпечення жителів нашої громади питною водою.
And we got very serious support to solve all of the challenges that we face from the German government. In the nearest future, using the funds of the project, we're planning to install the mine water cesspool at Centralna mine, one filtration system that is working according to the principle of reverse osmosis, which will serve as an alternative source for supplying the potable water for the residents of our community.
Сьогодні ситуація в країні залишається максимально напруженою. З'являються нові ризики для енергетичного сектору, і нам доведеться з ними впоратися. Вважаю, що післявоєнне відновлення обов'язково повинно включати тему вугільної трансформації, зеленої економіки, базуватися на розвитку відновлення джерел енергії, енергоефективності.
The tension is still very high. New risks are coming up for the energy sector, and we will have to deal with them. I believe that the post-war renovation should by any means include the topic of coal transition, green economy. It should be based on further developing renewable energy sources and energy efficiency.
Наразі для України відбувається...
You have about 2 minutes left of the time. I hope 2 minutes will be enough.
Наразі для України відбувається...
Перепрошую, що я вас перебиваю, пане Брикалов, у вас 2 хвилини лишилося.
Зрозумів. Наразі для України відбувається унікальний історичний момент. Це отримання статусу кандидата до Європейського Союзу. І для нас це крок назустріч новим перспективам, новим проєктам та новим програмам підтримки.
Now we are experiencing the unique historical moment for Ukraine as we have received the EU candidate status, new projects, new support programs.
Я дякую всім за можливість створення нової історії України. І ми виражаємо готовність і надалі рухатися заданим курсом, працювати в напрямку трансформації і посилювати реконверсію наших територій. Разом ми переможемо. Дякую за увагу.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to create new history of Ukraine. We would like to express our readiness to further stick to the designated course, to work for the sake of transformation, to strengthen reconversion of our territories. Together, we will win. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brykalov, for your intervention. I hope you
Дуже
can
вам
stay with
дякуємо, пане Брикалов.
us, for any questions from the audience later. Now I will turn to the speakers
Сподіваюся, що ви з нами зможете.
Okay, the translation was solved. So now I will turn to here to the speakers in the room. Sorry for the wait, but it was technically easier to arrange all the online speakers to speak first. So I would like to now invite Mr. Sasha Spasic, who is the acting director of public enterprise for underground exploitation of coal Resavica, to tell us something about their experience. You are leading an enterprise that will be one of the first ones in current time to face this sort of transition away from coal in the Western Balkans. I would like to ask you to share with us the challenges you face and the plans you have made for the closure of the mines that comprise this public enterprise you had, the Resavica.
Hvala. Hvala vam, dobar dan svima. Hvala vam što ste me pozvali na ovaj panel. Interesantno je. Prvi put sam na ovakvim sastancima. Ovako, da se malo predstavim, to je da predstavim kompaniju koju sam ja direktor. Ja sam u ovu kompaniju relativno skoro došao pre nekih godinu dana. Pa evo, za početak. Javno preduzeće za podzemnu eksploataciju uglja Resavica bavi se eksploatacijom strateške sirovine, to je visoko kvalitetni kameni i mrki ugalj, za razliku od niskokaloričnog lignita koji se kopa u Elektroprivrede Srbije. Ovaj ugalj se najvećoj meri koristi u termoelektranama Elektroprivrede Srbije. Jedan manji deo se koristi u komercijalnim svrhama i dok određene količine odlaze u toplane za grejanje. Ja se nadam da ne pričam brzo, mogu da...
Mislim da je okej.
Ono što je jako bitno napomenuti za ovo preduzeće, preduzeće u svom sklopu ima 9 rudnika. Tih 9 rudnika nalaze se pokrivaju većim deo, istočni deo Srbije i južni deo Srbije, koji su prilično, da kažem, siromašni, možemo tako da kažemo, ekonomski siromašni. Nažalost, zadnjih nekoliko decenija postali smo siromašni i za ljude, to jest demografska slika je izuzetno loša. Mislim da je takva slika i u drugim, da kažem, državama Balkana, ali prosto to je život, šta da radim. Ovo preduzeće, osim da kažem prioritetne proizvodnje iskopa uglja, imamo i 2 zavisna preduzeća. Jedno se bavi transportom, drugo se bavi, da kažem, ugostiteljskim uslugama, to jest bavi se ishranom i smeštajem rudara. Ukupno ovo preduzeće ima oko 4000 ljudi. U proces proizvodnje uključeno je, znači, direktno 4000 ljudi, a neki su procene da je indirektno za ovu kompaniju vezano između 15 i 20.000 porodica. Kao što znamo, osnovni cilj zelene agende je dekarbonizacija, to jest smanjenje ugljen dioksida. Srbija, kao potpisnik Sofijske deklaracije, kao i ratifikovanje Pariskog sporazuma, napravila je 2 strateška dokumenta. Prvi je INCEP, integrisani nacionalni klimatski energetski plan i strategija energetike. Javno je dostupan podatak da Srbija na nekom godišnjem nivou proizvodi oko 60 miliona tona ugljen dioksida. Od navedene količine Elektroprivreda Srbija proizvodi negde oko 29 miliona tona sa tendencijom da možda da smanjuje to, ali mislim da neće moći da smanji možda maksimalno do nekih 24-23 miliona tona ugljen dioksida. Javno preduzeće Resavica kao energetski strateško preduzeće je već 2018. godine ušlo u plan i planiralo je da krene u proces postepenog zatvaranja. Javno preduzeće je svoj deo posla kada je pitanju tehnički deo odradilo. Taj plan je podrazumevao 2 faze. Prva faza odnosilo se na zatvaranje svih rudnika u roku od 4 godine. Osim 2 rudnika, jedan rudnik je na istočnom delu Srbije, a drugi rudnik je u južnom delu Srbije. I u toj, da kažem, prvobitnom programu bilo je planirano da se posle 6 godina posle zatvaranja svih rudnika zatvore i ova 2. To jest, plan je bio da se do 2028. godine završi ceo proces zatvaranja javnog preduzeća za podzemnu eksploataciju uglja Resavica. Međutim, kao što znamo, taj plan nije ostvaren iz razloga, ima tu, da kažem, bilo je tu dosta različitih razloga, ali da kažem, o tim stvarima nema potrebe da pričamo, to ćemo dalje nekom budućnosti razgovarati i u Ministarstvu rudarstva i energetike i sa lokalnim zajednicama kako ćemo i šta dalje. Usled ovih novonastalnih okolnosti, sada razmišljenja idu...
Izvinite, morat ću vas ubrzati malo, pošto već je 5 minuta prošlo. Ako možemo parafrazirati, šta ste naučili u toku ovih, rekli ste da imali ste plan se nije desio. Šta se naučilo?
Znači, završit ću, brzo ću, da kažem, prvi pričat ćemo. U svakom slučaju, novim planom koji hoćemo da uradimo, naravno u saradnji sa Ministarstvom rudarstva i energetike, plan je da ova 2 rudnika, da kažem, to su rudnik Štavalj i rudnik Soko koji se nalaze u južnom i istočnom delu Srbije, uložimo određena finansijska sredstva u njegovo osavremenjavanje. Zašto je to bitno da vam kažem sada? Iz prostog razloga. Zato što ako podignemo proizvodnju visokokaloričnog mrkog uglja, a smanjimo proizvodnju lignita koji se recimo trenutno iskopava u Elektroprivredi Srbije, čisto da znate koja je proporcija. 1 tona iskopanog uglja u kompaniji gde sam ja direktor zamenjuje 2 do 3 tone niskokvalitetnog lignita. Prosta matematika. Imate 1.000.000 tona u Resavici, zamenjuje 2,5 do 3 miliona tona lignita, samim tim automatski imate i manje ugljen dioksida u vazduhu. Ajde da kažemo, to je ovako prilično će biti plastičan da vam objasnim u najkraćim crtama. Ono što mogu da vam kažem, vezano za da ja vidim kako može da ide tranzicija, kada je u pitanju pravedna tranzicija, strašan je problem, pošto sam ja svakoga dana tamo sa tim ljudima, rudarima i vidim kakav je strah u njihovim očima kada pomenete bilo kakvo zatvaranje rudnika. Ono što mogu da vam kažem, ja mislim da kada je u pitanju konkretno javno preduzeće Resavice imamo mogućnost da ugalj zamenimo zelenom energijom. Šta to znači? Javno preduzeće u svom posjedu ima 17.000 hektara eksploatacionih polja. Uzmemo teoretski, neka na 1 hektaru može da se uradi 1 megavat solara. Mi smo, da kažem, mogu da kažem da možemo da kažemo da smo na neki način pobedili i ušli u neku, da kažem, zelenu agendu. Znači, 17.000 hektara u posjedu preduzeća gde ćemo zatvarati rudnike, možemo kroz pravednu tranziciju, kroz prekvalifikaciju određenog broja zaposlenih, nego siguran sam zaposliti u delu koji bi se bavio, da kažem, vetroparkovima, to je generatorima ili solarom. Imam još vremena, ali mislim mogu da kažem, suština je generalno to. Znači, dva rudnika sa visokokalorijskim vrednostima uglja da ostanu do kraja tranzicije 2050. godine, da ispratimo zatvaranje Elektroprivrede Srbije, da ih hranimo sa visokokalorijskim ugljem, a da oni polako smanjuju proizvodnju niskokaloričnog lignita i mislim da je to neki put gde bi trebala Resavica, to je kompanija koju ja vodim, da ide.
Hvala puno. Thank you very much, Mr. Spasic. Just a minute, my notes got...
Ja se izvinjam, na kraju panela, kad se završi, samo da vam objasnim koliko je to sve teško i komplikovano na jednom bukvalno primjeru, kažem, čak nije ni, možda nekima deluje smešno, ali da kažem, u pitanju je neke, da kažem, nešto što sam planirao da uradim, ali kad završi svi neću ljudima da ako budete zainteresovani, pitanje je jedan, da kažem, segment pokušaja prebacivanja, zatvaranja u stvari jednog dela nekih, hajde da kažem, radnih mesta. Ali mogu da vam
Okay, we'll get back to that in the question session maybe. Now, thank you for your address. Now I would like to introduce Ms. Branislava Marsenic, who works for more than 10 years in the Energy Community Secretariat, dealing with regulatory frameworks for gas, energy retail markets, and consumer protection. And she's also the coordinator of the newly established Energy Community Center for Alleviating Energy Poverty. Branislava, you coordinate this center. Can you tell us what are its main activities and how you see the synergies between addressing energy poverty and just transition in the coal regions of the energy community?
Yes. Thank you, Nevena. Yes. Hello, everyone. Dobar dan. Let me start with a simple fact. Energy poverty levels in the energy community contracting parties are among the highest in Europe. Just to give you the picture, depending on the indicators used for measuring energy poverty, they range from, for example, 9 to 10% in Serbia and Montenegro. So 9% of population cannot keep their homes adequately warm, up to 40% in Kosovo. If you use, for example, income-related indicators, so the share of energy expenditure in the available income, these numbers, these levels of poverty are even much higher, going to 60% in Moldova. These are national estimates. What we don't know and what is really important for creating informative, data-based, effective policies is to know what is the level of energy poverty on local level. And here is the link with coal regions in transition. I'm pretty sure that levels of energy poverty will be among the highest in there. Not only because of the incomes, and not because of unemployment, it's also because of the housing state in these regions. I'm sure this building blocks built for mining regions are 50, 60 years old, backdated, not renovated. So one of the factors influencing energy poverty. Another important element, we see enormous rise in energy prices in the second half of the last year and this year. For the energy community contracting parties, we see the increase in electricity prices in this year in North Macedonia, Montenegro, and Moldova. In Moldova, even up to 50%. Natural gas prices increased at the end of last year in North Macedonia, and this year again in Moldova. What are the direct consequences of these high energy prices? It is, of course, affordability of energy for the citizens, but it is also the shift of energy policies. We see in Europe generally shift from long-term, well-established policies to target energy poor to short-term measures that are not only short-term, but they are not well targeted. We see politics going towards giving to all citizens a certain amount of help for paying energy bills, which is wrong, because there is then less for those that really need. It is, for example, the case in the country where we live, in Austria. What we see again as a trend is the revival of electricity produced from coal. And as Minister Mihailovic rightly mentioned earlier, we should see this as an exemption, as a temporary measure. We should not use this as an excuse for going a step back in the energy transition processes. So what we need to do in terms of energy poverty and its link with coal regions in transition is firstly to identify the population that is energy poor, particularly paying attention to the population and workers in the coal regions in transition. We have to define consistent and long-term informative-based policies. We should find funds to support this energy poverty and these policies, in particular, again, in coal regions, as they are highly sensible. For example, we can see some good examples in EU. In one coal region in Romania, for example, a lot was invested in renovation in energy efficiency for the housing of miners in that region. This has positive effects in many ways. Another interesting issue in our energy transition tracker published last week, it was mentioned that coal subsidies in the period 2019-2020 decreased in majority of contracting parties. We see this as a positive development, and we would like this to be continued, and that instead of subsidizing electricity produced from coal, we see this money directed, part of that directed to coal regions in transition and to energy poor. And finally, I would like to come to our Center for Alleviating Energy Poverty. Yes, we established it this year with the view to help and support our contracting parties in develop good energy policies and measures to address energy poverty. And we would like also in this framework that particular attention is given to coal regions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Marsenic. I hope we can address any questions later. And now I would like to invite our last, but certainly not least speaker for this panel, Mr. Admir Andelija, who is the CEO of Elektroprivreda BiH and our host today. Thank you for hosting us in your premises. Your company is the owner or co-owner of 14 other companies comprising the concern Elektroprivreda BiH, with a total of 11,500 employees and owning 7 coal mines. The discussion on phasing out coal is very hot in this period in the Western Balkans. There is the green agenda for the Western Balkans, the national emission, energy and climate plans, carbon taxing. Also, the war in Ukraine all play into this discussion. Can you share with us some information on the targets on phasing out coal for Bosnia and Herzegovina, and about the carbon taxation that you recently started introducing into your company calculations? What were the main conclusions from these calculations you had so far?
Zahvaljujem. Pozdravljam sve prisutne još jednom. Znači, Elektroprivreda Bosne i Hercegovine, kao što ste čuli u uvodu, je kompanija koja u svom sastavu ima još 14 povezanih društava, od kojih smo u 10 društava 100% vlasnici, u 3 društva smo većinski vlasnici, u jednom društvu smo manjinski vlasnici. I upravo je to neki 11,5 hiljada uposleni i povezano na to neki još 30 hiljada porodica koje su oslonjene na tu proizvodnju električne energije koja se odvija u Elektroprivredi Bosne i Hercegovine. Upravo je to naša odgovornost tolika koliko je broj porodica koji su oslonjeni na prihode koji se ostvaruju u Elektroprivredi Bosne i Hercegovine. Znači, mi smo 2020. godine, ministar Đindić je napomenuo da smo 2020. godine krenuli u obiman projekat reorganizacije i restrukturiranja kako Elektroprivrede, tako i rudnika. Znači, u martu 2021. godine donijeli smo dokument analiza i projekcije potreba za ugljem u Elektroprivredi Bosne i Hercegovine 2050. godine sa projekcijom dinamike obustave pojedinih rudarskih pogona. Materijal je, znači, ažuriran u decembru 2021. Prvi aneks urađen i drugi aneks u januaru 2022. godine. Znači, osnovni cilj dokumenta jeste da 2050. godine Elektroprivreda Bosne i Hercegovine bude CO2 neutralna. Dalje su obrađene dinamike zatvaranja termoenergetskih postrojenja, dinamike zatvaranja rudnika, uvođenje takse CO2 i dinamika izgradnje obnovljivih izvora električne energije. Znači, Elektroprivreda Bosne i Hercegovine u svom sastavu ima 7 rudnika koja su posebni privredni subjekti. Mi smo njima 100% vlasnici. Proizvodnja je organizovana u 8 pogona podzemne eksploatacije i 6 pogona nadzemne eksploatacije. Po ovom dokumentu planirana dinamika zatvaranja pojedinih proizvodnih pogona je 2021. godine odustajemo već od jednog proizvodnog pogona iz podzemne eksploatacije. 24. godine zatvaramo dodatna 4 pogona, 28. još jedan, kraj 29. jedan i na kraju 30. godine mi nećemo imati podzemnu eksploataciju u Elektroprivredi Bosne i Hercegovine. Kada je u pitanju površinska eksploatacija, krajem 23. ćemo zatvoriti 2 pogona, krajem 39. jedan pogon i krajem 50. odnosno tamo do 2050. ćemo zatvoriti preostala 2 pogona. Kada je pitanju proizvodnja uglja, znači mi smo imali informaciju da smo 2011. proizvodili 6,5 miliona tona uglja. 2023. je to već 4,13 miliona za narednu godinu, 2030. je 3,9 miliona i 2040. 1,27 miliona tona uglja. To će biti naše potrebe za uglje u 2040. i to će biti do 2050. kada prestajemo proizvodnju iz uglja. Kada je u pitanju broj uposlenih, 2011. smo imali u rudnicima, u 7 rudnika 9800 uposlenih. 2021. 7.500. Znači vidite da za 10 godina smo imali smanjenje od 2300 uposlenih. Međutim, sa početkom 2022. godine je to spalo na 6300. Znači za jednu godinu smo ostali bez 1200 uposlenih u rudnicima. 2023. je plan da imamo 5300 uposlenih, 2030. je 3400 i 2040. 686 uposlenih. Ovo govorim iz razloga što imamo razrađene detaljne planove zatvaranja rudarskih pogona i termoenergetskih objekata. Kada je u pitanju taksa za CO2, znači Elektroprivreda Bosne i Hercegovine je prva kompanija u regionu, znači uvela kompanijski obračun takse CO2, počeli smo sa 2021. godinom, to je 5%, znači 5% od cijene, znači od ukupne emisije takse CO2, to je znači na godišnjem nivou trošak kompanije 12,2 miliona eura, u 2022. godini je to nešto više, 36,8 miliona eura, 2023. će biti 42 miliona eura i 2024. 63 miliona eura. 25. računamo da ćemo imati 25% obračuna takse na CO2, kada za 26. je predviđena inače uvođenje takse na nivou Bosne i Hercegovine. Zašto smo krenuli ovaj projekat? Jednostavno da bi vidjeli finansijsku poziciju i tržišnu poziciju kompanije sa taksom na CO2, a još jedna stvar, znači ova sredstva smo opredijelili isključivo za izgradnju objekata obnovljivih izvora električne energije, prvenstveno vjetar i sunce. Ono što su izazovi pred ovakvim planom i ciljom jeste, znači osim ovih globalnih, geopolitičkih, da sada to ne navodimo, naravno najvažniji je ovaj socijalni aspekt prelaska sa kompanije koja dominantno proizvodi električnu energiju iz fosilnih goriva, to je znači negdje 80%, u kompaniju koja će biti pretežno oslonjena na obnovljive izvore. To je prije svega status radnika, status sredina u kojima postoje rudnici uglja. Do sada je Elektroprivreda Bosne i Hercegovine uložila oko 300 miliona eura u različite projekte sanacije i revitalizacije rudnika, od znači obnavljanja, zanavljanja rudarske opreme, pa i do ovoga socijalnog aspekta. Znači mi smo ove 1200 uposlenih u prošloj godini, za sve njih smo isplatili stimulativne otpremnine i to je sve bio trošak kompanije. Znači u svim ovim planovima, nažalost, mi za sada nemamo podršku države. Očekujemo u narednom periodu da kada budu i problemi malo veći, da ćemo imati malo jaču podršku države. Dalje, mi smo znači uvažavajući trendove kada je u pitanju zatvaranje tih rudarskih površina, evo kao što je kolega iz Resavice naveo, znači mi smo već u planu, imamo u 3 rudnika ovako nukleus, nove organizacione jedinice koje se bave uzgojem biomase za naše termoelektrane. Zatim na većini rudarskih kopova na kojima je završena eksploatacija, u planu smo izgradnju solarnih elektrana. Mislim da je u ovoj sedmici prva solarna elektrana će biti objavljen javni poziv za izgradnju i tako ćemo svaki neki mjesec dana u narednom periodu imati pozive za izgradnju. To je negdje oko 200 megavata solarnih elektrana i naravno i sva ona infrastruktura sa kojom raspolažu rudnici će biti stavljena u funkciju razvoja lokalne zajednice ili druge namjene. Ono što je također rizik jeste cjenovna politika unutar Bosne i Hercegovine. Vi znate da mi još uvijek imamo električnu energiju za veliki dio kategorija potrošača, socijalnu kategoriju. To nažalost će morati prestati da bude i vrlo brzo ćemo imati vjerovatno neku značajniju reorganizaciju, odnosno restrukturiranje tog dijela. Dalje, znači što je prijetnja su cijene CO2. Mi vidimo da je to u zadnju godinu dana drastično otišlo u odnosu na sve prognoze koje su bile predviđene za cijene CO2. Dalje, ono što je također za nas vrlo bitno jeste da imamo jasne energetske politike Europske unije. Mi imamo nekako osjećaj da taman neki voz mi se dofatimo i krenemo u tome, onda se tamo ljestvica digne za nas i onda nas to otprilike obeshrabruje, ne nas koji se bavimo time, ali većinu percepcija je takva da imamo osjećaj da mi to nikada nećemo dostići. Možda da budemo mi neka druga liga po tom pitanju, pa da nama, što kažu, da budu ovi modeli, najbolje vozila su u Evropi, a ovi drugi modeli malo za nas. Ali to je u suštini činjenica da mi imamo situaciju da, evo recimo, mi nemamo pojma na što će ličiti naše obaveze kada je u pitanju takse za CO2. Je li to 26, 25%, je li to 23, mi ne znamo. Mi radimo po planu da ćemo 26. godine imati 25% takse CO2 na nivou države. I naravno, za kraj ono što jeste problem, evo svih nas, to su ljudski resursi. Mi imamo strašan odliv uposlenih, kvalitetnog kadra i u elektroprivredi i u svim ovim kompanijama. Za sada nalazimo alternative, a vrlo brzo ćemo doći u poziciju da će nam u suštini zatvaranje rudnika biti zbog nedostatka radne snage, a ne zbog toga što smo napravili nekakav plan da to uradimo. Evo, toliko.
Puno hvala. Puno hvala na vašem izlaganju. Sada bi... Sorry, I went into Serbian. Thank you very much for your address, and I would like to open the floor for any questions if there are questions from the audience. We have been talking for so long, so I don't know if there is anyone. If not, I would like to return to a question to Mr. Spasic, and also more or less the same question to Mr. Andelija. Mr. Andelija, you mentioned that you already closed a part, actually let go part of the miners. What are the plans for the next closures in terms of employees, and also do you only look at the employees, or do you look at the entire communities that are revolving around them? So to plastically explain this, do you maybe look at investing in the families of the employees instead of just giving them funds otpremnine?
Prilike, ja sam u svom izlaganju nagovijestio da je taj segment, socijalni segment u suštini najvažniji segment kada je u pitanju tranzicija sa uglja na obnovljive izvore. Znači, nije mala stvar, znači naš je plan da imamo 5300 uposlenih sa 2023. godinom. Međutim, nije to, nažalost, jedini problem elektroprivrede. Mi dosta kontaktiramo sa našim partnerima iz svijeta, iz Evrope, prije svega sa Svjetskom bankom, kada je u pitanju podrška tim projektima pravedne tranzicije, i u suštini mi smo jedan netipičan vlasnik rudnika. Znači, rijetko se susreću vlasnici koji jedva čekaju da se nešto zatvori. Uglavnom tamo vlasnici na zapadu imaju neku dobit od toga, organizovali su biznis, plaćaju koncesije, zadovoljna je lokalna zajednica, zadovoljni su uposlenici. Mi smo malo netipični. Mi, nažalost, imamo ogroman problem u rudnicima, mi smo te probleme naslijedili, ti problemi nisu nastali u zadnjih 10 godina, oni se gomilaju, evo, i u Srbiji i u regionu i 40 i 50 godina, mislim, od kako su osnovani, i mi smo u suštini spremni da veliki dio rudarskih pogona, evo, podzemnu eksploataciju i prije ovoga što smo rekli zatvorimo. Međutim, ovo što smo mi napravili kao plan, to je u suštini taj pravedna tranzicija. Kada su u pitanju lokalne zajednice, naravno da su i oni zainteresovane da taj projekat malo duže traje, nisu ni oni spremni da dobiju, ne znam, 500 ili 600 ili 1000 uposlenika na birovu, odnosno na birovu za zapošljavanje. Druga stvar, mislim da ni lokalne zajednice nisu baš spremne da preuzmu tu svu infrastrukturu koju rudnici tamo posjeduju. Dva su razloga, naravno nije sva ta imovina ni perspektivna, i drugi dio, ona je opterećena raznoraznim hipotekama. Tako da je problem, kada je u pitanju lokalna zajednica i uposlenici rudnika, to je u suštini dominantan problem naš problem unutar elektroprivrede.
Thank you very much. And unless there are, yes, there is a question over there. The microphone is coming.
Boris Mrkala, Just Finance International. Rekli ste da namjeravate zatvoriti zadnje rudnike 2050. godine. Koje termoelektrane će koristiti taj ugalj? Hvala.
Ja se izvijem, za koga je pitanje?
Za gospodina Andeliju, proste.
Ovako, znači 2050. godine je predviđeno zatvaranje 2 zadnja pogona, to su rudnik Dubrave, pogon Dubrave i pogon Šikulje, rudnik uglja Krijeka, za koje je planirano da snabdijevaju ugljem blok 7 termoelektrane. To je scenarij koji je zvanično scenarij u okviru Elektroprivrede Bosne i Hercegovine. Ukoliko blok 7 ne bude u mogućnosti da se izgradi, mi ćemo završiti sa proizvodnjom 2040. Ja vam taj scenarij nisam iznio, ali postoji takav scenarij.
Hvala.
Any more questions? Yes. Can you pass the microphone to someone?
Majda Ibraković, Centar za životnu sredinu. Pitanje za gospodina Andeliju. Kada kažete da lokalne zajednice nisu spremne da preuzmu postojeću infrastrukturu od rudnika ili termoelektrana, na što tačno mislite i da li postoji tu neki vid saradnje sa lokalnim zajednicama, obzirom da te površine treba i rekultivisati, kakvi su tu planovi? Znamo za ovu biomasu koju ste pomenuli, međutim, postoji li nešto drugo što se tiče povratka i rehabilitacije tih prostora koji su do sad iskorištavani za proizvodnju energije lokalnim zajednicama? Kako su planovi? Hvala.
Kažem da nisu spremni, mislio sam da nisu spremni u skladu sa zakonom. Pazite, Zakon o rudarstvu je jasno propisao obavezu rudnika i obavezu lokalne zajednice. Znači, rudnici su vlasnici imovine. Lokalna zajednica može postati vlasnikom imovine u skladu sa Zakonom o rudarstvu. Znači, mora da plati pravičnu naknadu za evo tu rekultivaciju o kojoj vi govorite. To su prilična sredstva. Znači, to nisu sredstva koja su minorna, pogotovo ako znamo da su recimo naši rudnici organizovani u Brezi, u Živinicama, ne znam ja, lokalnim sredinama koji nemaju neke, ili recimo tamo Travnik, Bila, koji nemaju neka sredstva planirana za to. Mislio sam na taj segment. Naravno da su zainteresovani besplatno da preuzmu tu imovinu. Nažalost, za sada nije moguće tu imovinu besplatno. Pa smo sada svjedoci, ne znam, vi ste vjerovatno svjedoci, ne znam, tamo uzurpacije kopa, jezera Kop na Šičkom brodu. To je znači potpuno imovina rudnika Krijeka. Već se je tamo lokalna zajednica etablirala kao neko ko bi trebao da upravlja i da bude vlasnik toga. Za sada rudnik Krijeka se drži po strani toga, ali je to ozbiljan problem. To je ozbiljan problem, znači rudnici ne mogu imovinu dati džaba lokalnoj zajednici, osim ako se naravno ne izmijeni neki zakon, ne kaže neko da je to džaba, ali opet mora neko reći kako da se namiri rudnik i svega toga. Zato sam rekao da lokalne zajednice nisu baš previše zainteresovane po ovom modelu kakav je sad.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions. In that case, I would like to ask Mr. Spasic to elaborate a bit on the experience directly on the experience with closure that you have faced. You mentioned that you faced experience with closure of a mine. So if you can elaborate on the question that you wanted to elaborate before.
Ja se izvinjam, pogrešno ste me razumeli, nisam imao iskustva, nego recimo jedan segment pokušaja da, ajde da kažem, zatvorimo jednu, da ga objasnim, konkretno ću. Ja inače živim u Beogradu, sedište preduzeća u Despotovcu, to je jedno malo mesto u, da kažem, centralno-istočnom delu Srbije. Vraćam se, nadovezam se na sve ove probleme koje je kolega iz BiH rekao kada su u pitanju lokalne samouprave. Zašto to govorim? Znači, mora da postoji sinergija između lokalne samouprave, naravno ministarstva i menadžmenta kompanije. Kompanija Resavica ima otvoren račun u jednoj velikoj banci u Srbiji i u jednom momentu sam ja došao, znate kako to ide, svi se bore za tržište, svi se hoće da uzme Resavica, inače veliki poslovni partner za banke, i onda je meni jedna druga velika banka došla i rekla je, možemo da vam ponudimo bolje uslove u odnosu na drugu banku, ukoliko pređete kod nas. Predsjednik opštine, inače to je naravno siromašna opština, je kada je to čuo, pošto sam razmišljam ekonomski, dobit ću bolje uslove, manje troškove održavanja, dotrčao je, što bi rekli ljudi, iz menadžmenta tek ove banke su dotrčali, rekli ne, ni slučajno, molim vas, nemojte da zatvorite, jer ukoliko vi pređete u drugu banku, 10 porodica koje žive u toj filijali će ostati bez posla. Pri tome u toj filijali rade mladi ljudi, devojke koje žele da zasnuju porodice na toj, da kažem, opštini koja je inače siromašna opština. Zašto sam malo pre treba da kažem, nije to, htio sam da se našalim, u stvari nije to za šalu. Hoću da vam kažem, jako je teško naći balans šta uraditi u takvim sredinama. Ono što ću ja uraditi, naravno u saradnji sa Ministarstvom rasne energetike, napravit ćemo jedan pilot projekat za jedan rudnik koji smatram da najpre treba da se zatvori. Uradit ćemo pilot projekat, naravno da vidimo kakav će biti uticaj zatvaranje tog rudnika na lokalnu samoupravu, na ekonomiju lokalne samouprave, naravno i na ekonomiju te regije. To sam htio da kažem, znači nisam imao iskustva u smislu zatvaranja rudnika, ali samo da kažem, to je jedan mali segment, pri tome, pazite, to je filijala banke. Sve se poremetilo, verujte mi, odjedan put je nastao haos, 7-8 dana su ljudi razmišljali, čekajte, baš morate. Ja sam prosto samo želeo da razmišljam i želim da razmišljam tržišno. Tako da je tanka je ta linija, kada je u pitanju socijalna priča. Moramo strašno da budemo vezani, znači lokalna samouprava, nadležno ministarstvo i naravno menadžment kompanije. To sam samo hteo da kažem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spasic. You actually made a very, very important point, which is related to expanding the scope of just transition, not only focusing on the workers, but also focusing on the communities. What you faced is actually what we are talking about when we talk about just transition. Just transition is dealing with the bank, including the employees. Thank you everyone for your addresses, and thank you to the audience for the questions. We have here plenty of conclusions. One of the most important things is sharing the experience to achieve the complex process of just transition. It is of paramount importance to include everyone, to have peer-to-peer learning, to build institutional capacity, and to do proper reskilling timely. It is also very important to have social dialogue and stakeholder engagement, and very important to ensure that there are funds for this transition in order to make it just. I would like to thank everyone on the panel, and a big thank you to the participants online.